Hello, Sun City residents. This is Rusty Bradshaw, and I'm here to give you some highlights from the Recreation Centers of Sun City Bylaws Working Group Town Hall that was yesterday. And for full disclosure, let me tell you that I am a member of the Bylaws group. And we'll wait for the jet to pass. I'll repeat, just for clarity, I am a member of the Bylaws Working Group, which has 9 members. And I'm not going to go through all the changes of the bylaws that were made because that is a very lengthy document. You can see it on the RCSC website. There will be a second town hall tomorrow at 5 o'clock in the evening at Sundial Center, 14801 North 103rd Avenue. So if you have some concerns or questions about it, come to the town hall tomorrow. And if you do have concerns about changes that were done in the bylaws, bring some suggestions. Don't come just to complain, but let's hear what you have to say. So here are some of the highlights from the meeting yesterday, and it's mainly going to be people's comments. Had one resident who was very upset about the definition of business affairs of the corporation. That resident said the original was 42 words. The working group took out 17 of those words and added 100 more. He believes the definition for business affairs of the corporation should be succinct and clear. There's a lot of repetition in the revision. He also said the working group should be ashamed of itself. Or, to quote him, hanging our head in shame. Rick Gray, a member of the working group, said that definition is thorough, and the previous one did not really define what a proper motion or amendment to bylaws would be for residents to put forward, and which types of motions would be improper. And the definition basically says that motions that have to do with the financial end of how the corporation does business is an improper motion. He said that thoroughness is more important than for clarity. Another resident said the proposed bylaws violate the Articles of Incorporation and the sense of community. He said that residents have already lost a lot of their privileges and suggested that the bylaws don't go into effect until the new board policies are adopted by the board. Gray answered by saying that the bylaw revisions were based on legislation, which allow the legislative process, which allows for time to craft bills. And in this, he's referring to the changes to the annual meeting that were proposed in the bylaws. And in those changes, the working group was trying to give maximum time for members to craft their amendments. Another resident argued that without assessments, members have no rights. And he believes the assessment should be equal. In other words, right now, the assessment is per property, meaning that if there are 2 people in the household, they're paying the full amount of the assessment. But because of a change in 1999, I believe, when they went from per person to per property, Some people were grandfathered in, they're paying half. Whereas now, if there's one person in the house, they're paying the full amount. He believes it should be equal for all. And he also believes that the bylaws are in violation of Article 8, Section 5 of the Articles of Incorporation. Preston Wynn, a member of the bylaws working group, said RCSC was sued over that very thing years ago, and the courts ruled that per property assessment is reasonable. Another resident commended the working group for its work. However, she suggested to not put a minimum amount of years for the long-range planning committee to work on projects. As proposed in the bylaws, the long-range planning committee would look at projects 5 years into the future, from a minimum of 5 years up into the future. Instead, she suggested putting a dollar amount on the projects they could look at until a group is formed to look at years 1 through 4. Another resident said that in 1981, RCSC locked members out of board meetings, but that only lasted 2 meetings. Pesky notes here, bear with me please. The same resident also said the way to submit motions as proposed by these set of bylaws is ludicrous, and member engagement won't happen. And just a quick synopsis, the annual member meeting would be held in March. Motions can be submitted the day after the previous annual meeting. There will be months till the end of September when these can be submitted, and then they will be submitted to the attorney to see if they are proper or improper motions. At the end of November, they'll be finalized. December, they'll be fine-tuned. Voting will start in mid-January through the end of February, and only voting will be taken prior to the meeting. This resident also made a comment about, this things that are going on about losing a sense of community and stuff through work on the bylaws and other things, was the reason that there are only 2 board members, or 2 people as candidates for the board this year for 4 open slots. And Preston Wynn said that the fact that there are only 2 candidates goes both ways, meaning that people just aren't getting involved. He also believed that making motions at the annual meeting itself with only a few minutes to comment is not a good way to do business. He also called for this resident and others that if they had suggestions for the bylaws, to bring them to the working group. Tom Foster, RCSC board president, who was not on the working group, said that RCSC has to be in compliance with state law. And Rick Gray said RCSC board has a fiduciary responsibility or it will be sued. Another resident had concern about Article 9, in which committee chairman and co-chair was changed to chairman and vice chair. She suggested that vice chairs on committees should be RCSC members and not board members, because the board members are already chairs, and to have two on the committee she felt was a little bit much. Another resident had several questions, wanted to know what the definition of a majority would be. She also wanted to know that in previous revisions of the bylaws, did they follow the ANCA? And she wanted to know what a designated representative was on a committee. There was a phrase in there that the chair or the chair's designated representative, and basically that is the person the chairman selects to fill in if he or she is not available. And by procedure, that is the vice chairman. She also wanted to know if anybody's going to, if people were going to know who the lawyer was that assisted the working group, and was money for this budgeted in RCSC's finances for this year. And I can't remember the lawyer's last name, but her first name was Ashley, and they've worked with her before, and this legal expense wasn't budgeted, and the statement was made by RCSC officials that they'd already blown their legal budget for this year on lawsuits. In reference to guest passes for those residents who were single member households, a resident said that guests come every day to take part in RCSC amenities, and why shouldn't single residents have a guest pass? Steve Collins, a member of the board who was not on the working group, said that any member, if they want a motion in front of the board, can suggest motions to any of the board members. And he said that if someone suggested a motion to him, he would bring it forward at the board meeting. And in the proposed bylaws for under discipline procedures, it was changed that both the accuser and the accused in an incident report would get to see copies of the incident report. The accused would get a redacted copy so they didn't see the personal information of the accuser. Collins said that giving copies of those reports could violate privacy. Another resident wanted to know if board members or management were at the meetings of the working group as observers. And there were two that were there as observers at different times. And in the last meeting, a couple of management people were there as observers. And they all, this resident also wanted to know if the lawyer was ever present at any of the working group meetings. And no, she was not present physically, but she came in remotely a couple of times to chat about some specific items. And in regards to the Long Range Planning Committee, a resident who was on that committee said that it was not really right to limit them to projects from 5 years and beyond, because they may have to consider things that may come up that requires adjustment to things that were approved in years 1 through 4. This same resident also asked what the process would be for the 2026 annual meeting, because even if these bylaws are passed, there wouldn't be enough time, certainly not the kind of time built into the proposed process, to submit motions and go through the vetting process that the proposed bylaws suggest. Tom Foster said there is a plan for that meeting, but they can't do anything with the plan until these bylaws are passed. And he said that legal considerations impact that decision. Another resident said, how could you have a vote without telling all members what they will vote on? And what he's talking about is making sure that every RCSC member gets to know what is being considered. Now, unless you mail something to every household, which is quite spendy, there are a number of ways that people can see this. Now, you can't force people to look at the website or paper copies or things of that nature, but they're out there. And the resident who talked about equality again wanted to know what the working group was going to do to fix the inequality of the assessments. And those were the highlights from the Bylaws Town Hall. Remember, there is a second one tomorrow at 5 p.m. at Sundial Center. Bring your questions, bring your concerns, but also bring suggestions, solutions to concerns that you have. So hope to see a bigger crowd on Wednesday. Thank you for watching.